Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On this episode, we're jumping back to the past with one of the Nintendo 64 twin-stick shooters that was the predecessor to games like Smash TV and Total Carnage. This is also a game that I foolishly passed over back in the day, having no idea how much fun it would be, nor how difficult it becomes the more you play. Today we're checking out Robotron 64, developed by Crave Entertainment and published by GT Interactive and Midway, released to the Nintendo 64 in 1998. While it may look fairly tame compared to its sequels, Robotron is a series that will throw you into some intense battles, and now all in 3D. The story goes a bit like this. You're a scientist trapped in an alternate dimension, and your goal is to save the last human family. Your powers give you the ability to battle the evil robots that are relentlessly eradicating humanity, and while you're not a student of the Xavier School for the Gifted, you're a mutant that has a talent for smashing robots. Gameplay wise, you've got a 3D twin stick shooter that will test your mettle through 200 levels. While that off the rip sounds daunting, the first 100 levels are the normal mode and the second 100 is the hard mode. The first 100 stages are no cakewalk, getting gradually more difficult while sprinkling bonus stages and boss encounters every so often. You can use two controllers if you want to have two analog sticks to move and aim, or use a single controller and use the C buttons to aim, similar to the Super Nintendo ports of Smash TV and Total Carnage. The shoulder buttons will change the camera perspective so you can pick your flavor of angles to dispatch the killer robots. You'll have a few upgrade items on each board like spread shots, flamethrowers, shields, and speed boost, all of which will make your mission a little easier, but at a base, you can only take one hit from projectiles or collision before losing a life. You can stack extra lives fairly quick, however, and unless you have the time to attempt all 200 levels, there are passwords to pick up where you left off. Let's talk about the difficulty real quick, since this goes from letting you figure out some strategies and giving you tons of upgrades and extra lives early on, to legit pummeling you in the later stages. By the first third of the game, Robotron will start smacking you up with numerous ways to lose a life. One hit is all it takes to send your scientist back to the lab, and if you lose all of your lives, the game is over, and you start over from your last save point or the very beginning. Password saves will remember how many lives you had going into it along with your score, but the same rules apply should you fail and lose all of them. Robotron 64 will make you work for getting the 100% clear through all 200 levels, and expect heavy resistance the further you go. The controls remain tight and upgrades can help you get out of some tight situations, but ultimately you'll have to learn the dance or get served on the dance floor. Mid and late game levels especially throw in tons of enemies, and all you can do is get them before they get you or the other humans. Now there are a lot of hazards like electric pylons, reflecting beams, electric barriers, and if the robots get to the humans first, they'll turn them into bloodthirsty cyborgs. Reflective beams do ricochet your bullets, so you can get creative with bending shots around the arena. Level warps will appear on some stages, and these will let you skip either one to several stages if you can get to it while it's active. Graphics wise, Robotron 64 and X used a PC rendering engine, with the 64 version being slightly faster than its PS1 counterpart. There were some interesting articles from the development team detailing the process, and it's cool to see how they made this all work. While the PS1 version had a lot of challenges, once they worked them out, making the 64 version was an overall improvement. Running at 30 frames per second, this version actually runs better than its PSX version, which is typically the other way around for most titles that appeared on both consoles at this time. Stage designs are 3D arenas that can shift perspective based on which camera angle you choose, and from there it becomes a flurry of neon text, bullets, and symbols as you eviscerate the robots. If you're familiar with the arcade original, it very much retains the style while adding in polygon graphics and even more intense gameplay. Each arena is a single plane board with often vibrant psychedelic visuals. While the backgrounds are often muted or just flat black, the foreground is a constant stream of color. Sprites are varied with numerous sizes and types of enemies to face, and humans will have a few types but remain constant during the game's run. The enemies you'll see have numerous types like the robot grunts to the massive mad scientists that are essentially mini bosses before getting to the major encounters. There's a few boss characters that will have large health bars, and these are the biggest enemies in the game by far. Level 100 and 200 are the mid and final bosses, and both of these are massive. If that weren't enough, now throw in frantic bullet patterns and constantly spawning enemies, and these battles become the peak of hectic. The overall art style of the game is fun, prioritizing gameplay over looks, and it works fairly well considering how it performs. Even when the screen is going absolutely mental, the frame rate holds steady. This game does get pretty bug, often having a couple dozen enemies on screen at a time without missing a beat. While the backgrounds are typically chill, the action on the forefront stays furious from the jump. Sound wise, Robotron 64 is awesome with its energetic soundtrack featuring a lot of high tempo electronic music composed by Orpheus Handley. The tunes stay pretty intense throughout each stage, and the variations of 4 to the Floor, Hard House, and Gabber mixes well with the frenetic nature of the gameplay. The tunes games remind me a lot of when AMP used to be on MTV back in the 90s and feel similar to games like Intuo Nitrous Oxide or Wipeout that would appear on the show somewhat often. There's a good handful of tracks throughout the game, and each is well produced with thick drum kits and synth bass lines. There's even a little bit of voice modulation with the humans on the board and the mad scientist's garbled speech, and even the robots will talk a bit of cyber smack as they beat you into the checkerboard. Shot audio, depending on weapon equip, will have some proper punch to them, and downing each enemy type has their own unique war cry and boom. Audio indicators will give you a hint as to what enemies are coming onto the screen, so the audio is doing quite a lot here. To sum it all up, Robotron 64 is an awesome update for the 1982 arcade classic that takes an already good game and spices it up further. The gameplay is frantic while still being very fun and addictive once you get your bearings. That's not to say it isn't a difficult game though, because once you get past the opening stages, it gets pretty difficult, and even more so when the level's beyond 100. This is an approachable game, but it becomes very challenging well before the midpoint and will constantly throw new enemies and hazards at you, making it spontaneous with each encounter. The 64 didn't get a lot of shoot 'em ups, let alone twin stick shooters in the West, but the handful it did get were pretty solid, much like this here. It's a mystery why more twin stick shooters weren't made for the console, but with this in hand, you've got a good way to kill numerous hours, if not days, trying to save humanity. Robotron 64 gets an 8 out of 10 and comes highly recommended to fans of twin stick shooters and twitchy arcade style games. At a glance, it may seem pretty basic, but once you get your teeth in, you begin to see how complex the game gets as it progresses. This one is still a relatively cheap pickup in the West, going for about $20 for loose copies and about $60 for complete copies. In the PAL regions, it runs about $43 for loose copies and $97 plus for complete copies at the time of this recording. If you have a Nintendo 64 and like shoot 'em ups, this should definitely be in your rotation, or play this however you can. And if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching, and if you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you use this as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and commentaries come up in the near future. Until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.